Welcome to Real Money, Real Life, the podcast where we get real about money and the messy human stuff that comes with it. I'm Linda Grizely, financial educator and your Me Money guide to financial clarity. Each week, we dive into financial concepts and money strategies, but we always tie it back to real life, emotions, mindset, and how money actually shows up day to day. If you're ready for practical tools, mindset shifts, and honest conversations that meet you where you are, not where the world thinks you should be, you're in the right place. Because you deserve to feel confident with your money and good about how you use it. No judgment, no lectures, and definitely no putting yourself last.
Hello, everyone. If you're listening, you're one of the real ones, the ones ready to let go of shame and learn what real financial resets actually look like. Today, we're talking about bankruptcy, but not as failure, as a financial tool. This is a topic that carries enormous stigma and fear, but for many people, it can be the turning point that restores stability, dignity, and hope. And helping people understand money without shame is the foundation of my work. My guest today, Adrienne Hines, brings nearly 3 decades of experience helping people navigate debt relief with honesty, empathy, and clarity. We're going to talk about what bankruptcy really is, what it isn't, and how rebuilding after debt can be empowering rather than devastating. Adrienne is a bankruptcy attorney with 30 years of experience, and she's the creator behind The Ladylike Lawyer. She uses her platform to teach people the truth about debt and bankruptcy. She's got calm, straightforward guidance. Her work focuses on removing shame, correcting misinformation, and helping people understand their financial options with confidence. Today, she continues her legal practice while creating content that empowers people to make informed decisions about their money. Her message is simple: everyone deserves debt relief with dignity. Hello, Adrienne.
Hi, Linda. Thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm looking forward to this conversation. I know you and I have talked before, and I found it interesting because I was one of the people, even as being a financial planner and talking to people with money and a coach, I personally always thought of bankruptcy as like, oh my God, last resort, like that is shame. Like I had the shame attached to it. So I'm guilty. So I am so much looking forward to this conversation. And I always like to start off to find out what led you on this career path to work with bankruptcies and talk about debt relief and create the Ladylike Lawyer.
Well, that's a good question, and I think it does really help to clarify kind of who I am and how I ended up in this business. I'd first like to say that I love being a bankruptcy lawyer. I love it. I absolutely love it because I truly do understand how beneficial it can truly be for people. But I ended up really in bankruptcy. It was a bit of a circuitous route. I've been a lawyer for almost 30 years, and much of my career was focused on being a specialist in workers' compensation injuries. And I started doing bankruptcy work on the side because my clients, if they got hurt at work, if there was any controversy about what happened, their paychecks stopped. And even though my career looked like it was an injury career, I began to realize that I had a tremendous amount of care and worry for people who were struggling financially. And I began to see that I'm more of a helper, and I was really drawn to the bankruptcy practice because I understood that people needed to understand more about this so that they could stop torturing themselves. And so I made the shift going from injury law straight into full bankruptcy about a year and a half ago. I'd been doing bankruptcy on the side for many years, but I made the switch because I came to the point in my career when I realized that it was time to just do the things that felt right. And that's really why I ended up staying in the bankruptcy practice and doubling down on it.
Yeah. And I think you talk about debt relief with dignity, and I think that's exactly what you're talking about. That's what you found that people really needed.
Yeah, I have concluded in over 55 years on this earth that I'm an incredibly empathetic person. And I was oftentimes trying to work against my empathy, right?
Yeah.
And I came to the conclusion that I was going to be more successful if I leaned into the parts of my personality that were were the most powerful traits that I have. And clearly empathy is one of them. I'm more empathetic than the average person. I worry about people when they're not even worrying about themselves. And so bankruptcy is a great area to be in if you're that kind of person.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. It is so important to lean into yourself and to know yourself. I love that you found that. So I think that, like the intro said, there is a misunderstanding about bankruptcy. So tell us more about what that misunderstanding is and why we all think that it's this horrible thing.
Well, I think that first and foremost, bankruptcy is very much designed to help people who have a certain kind of debt. And I want to stop and say that this is, I think, where some of the confusion really comes about with a lot of people. Very basically, there are three types of debt that we generally are going to deal with in the world, at least in America. The first kind of debt we call priority debt, and that's going to be things like taxes and child support and alimony and student loans. We can hear why they might be priority. It's the government. We owe the government. We owe our kids. That's one kind of debt, and that generally will not go away in bankruptcy. For those of you listening, taxes, child support, alimony, and yes, student loans are not generally going away in a bankruptcy. So we need to know that first and foremost because it helps you understand why bankruptcy exists and who it's supposed to help. The second kind of debt is going to be secured debt. So it's going to be like a car loan or a mortgage. Your mortgage is secured by the deed, car loan is secured by the car. We move past those two types of debt, priority and secured debt. Everything else is going to be what we call general, unsecured, non-priority debt. Bankruptcy is designed to get rid of general, unsecured, non-priority debt. It's going to be credit cards, medical bills, payday loans, personal loans, lawsuits from like evictions or old contracts with Verizon and things like that. It's not taxes. It's not child support. It's not a car loan. It's everything else down at the bottom. And so bankruptcy is designed to get rid of that type of debt. You don't get a free car and you don't get to screw over your children. You get to get rid of private debt from lenders whose job it is to make money off of you, who didn't take a security interest. So when we talk about bankruptcy, you have to understand that there are provisions in place for people who lend money for people to buy cars, people who lend money to people to buy houses or taxes or child support. What we're looking to get away and go away in bankruptcy, and the ideal person for bankruptcy is going to be somebody who has unmanageable general unsecured non-priority debt. That's going to be credit cards, all that type of stuff. So it's designed very specific. It's not really built for people with lots of mortgage problems, right? It's not really meant for people with child support problems. That's not the type of person who's ideally suited. And the reason that bankruptcy is not the end is because the purpose of bankruptcy in American law is to eliminate this debt that is private, right? And I define it as largely predatory in America because the American economy requires that we get rid of this debt quickly so that we can get back into the game. A lot of people don't understand that bankruptcy is a solution to a problem people already have. And that is the real core of what I talk about. Your problem is already debt. Bankruptcy didn't create it. Bankruptcy is just one of a few safe legal ways to manage it. And it happens to be the best, safest legal way to manage it. So it's not the end. It's a solution to a problem you've already got. And filing bankruptcy is how you go from, I had a client this morning with $82,000 in credit cards and medical bills, right? And they're making $42,000 a year. So it takes you from the place where you owe $82,000 in credit cards and it wipes them away for some people. It literally wipes it away. And the only reason we would allow that to happen in America is because the reason somebody got into $82,000 in debt is predatory in nature. In the United States of America, we have systematically removed things called usury laws. And Linda, you and I are old enough to think bankruptcy is bad because we were born in a time where usury laws still existed. And so we don't understand, the older we are, the less we understand how terribly fragile the current economy is. And when the American government has taken away usury laws, those were caps on interest. Those are the reasons why we took down the Gambino family, for example. It was illegal when the Gambino family did it, but now that we've removed those laws, since organized crime has fallen to the wayside, corporations have taken over. And it's important to understand that lenders only make money off of people who cannot pay the money back. And therein is the trap. And so that's why I understand that people come to me very emotionally terrified, broken, scared, ashamed, desperate. But the reality is that bankruptcy literally is the vehicle that turns your life around. It gets rid of the 82,000. And that's your problem. Your problem was never your credit score. Your problem's $82,000. I meet with 10 to 15, 18 people a week, and the debt levels are anywhere from 20 to 25,000 to 150 or more. It's very normal to have most of my clients in the 40 to 65, $70,000 range in debt. There are a lot of people who need to be talking to me who don't even realize that this is a legitimate option.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you put that into perspective because I didn't know about these usury laws. I had no
Mhm.
idea that that was a thing and that they were gone now. And I just can't even imagine somebody that ends up out of survival mode having to put things on a credit card at 30% interest. I mean,
Right.
there's no way to recover from that except bankruptcy.
And therein is the solution. You see that you've just taken your own self through the problem.
Yeah.
And the reality is that bankruptcy is literally the best solution available for most people. And so a lot of people think, well, we got to do bankruptcy last. Bankruptcy is the last resort. And that's the mistake a lot of people make. The very first thing anybody should be doing if they find themselves in unmanageable debt is they need to sit down, write it all out, and try to find a way to budget it, right? You try to bring in side hustles, you try to cut out expenses you don't need. But there comes a point in time where, you cannot get blood out of a stone. I had a client this morning who makes $1,723 a month on Social Security, and she had $27,000 in credit cards, and her minimum payments are $710 a month. She has $1,723 a month coming in on Social Security, and I want to point out that she has a severe disability, and this is how we change her life around. So she's not paying 700, she can't afford it. She's going without medicine, right? So bankruptcy is, we don't want her to go try the other things, which is borrowing more money. That's just a shell game, right? And the only other solution is going to be debt settlement. There's only 4 ways to get out of debt. It's budgeting, it's bankruptcy, it's borrowing more money, which comes with compounding interest and a whole set of problems, or debt settlement, which I will say is largely a scam in America. It is a private for-profit companies that sell you an idea that doesn't exist. No creditor can be forced by a debt consolidator to take less than what you owe. Only a court can tell you, Capital One, that you can pay less than what you owe. So there's no forcible way that a debt consolidation company can force a creditor to take less than what you owe. And that's what they don't tell you. And so it really comes down to 3 options to get out of debt safely and legally. It's budgeting, it's bankruptcy, or it's borrowing more money. And today, right today, as we are recording this, the prevailing current interest rate, daily APR interest rate on a payday loan down the street from my house is 391%.
Oh
And
my
that is the
goodness.
problem. So borrowing more money creates compounding interest. Bankruptcy serves to get rid of the debt for people who can't afford it, like my client this morning with $1,700 in Social Security, or Not everybody just gets to walk away from their debts. If you make decent money, you have to actually pay some or all of your debt back. But that's a Chapter 13, and there will be no compounding interest. And the judge, in your case, tells your creditors what they will receive. And that's why it is a safe, formal version of a debt settlement. So we're now down to 3 legitimate options to deal with debt, overwhelming debt. And I think so many people think that there's a million different ways that they just don't know about, right? And they just, if they find it on the internet, if they find this guy who will remove this from their credit, they should be good. You don't know that removing things from your credit might help you in the moment with your credit score, but it doesn't make the debt go away. You're still going to get sued on it. You still owe it. So understanding that the problem is debt and bankruptcy is a safe legal solution is really the shift that most people need to make in order to understand really why there's so much unnecessary fear about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh,
Yeah.
thanks for all that.
Yeah.
Okay. I want the listeners to understand you mentioned Chapter 13. So
Mhm.
they're probably thinking, oh, what are the different chapters? So go ahead and explain what those are really quick.
Absolutely. There are 2 different types of bankruptcies, and this is a point where a lot of people get very confused. The very basics of it are, if your household income is below a certain number, based on the number of people in your household and the state you live in. For an example, Ohio, a single person making $65,000 or less, household of 2, it's 79. A household of 3 is about 99. Household of 2 is 84. Household of 3 is 99. Household of 4 is 120. Okay. If your household income is below those numbers, then you're probably going to qualify or be close to qualifying for the easy Chapter 7 bankruptcy. That's the one everybody wants to file, because that means you literally get to file it and walk away from general unsecured non-priority debt. But there's income requirements. And for those of us who make too much money to file a Chapter 7, the other option is called a Chapter 13. And a Chapter 13 is you have to pay, if you go into it because your income's too high, then you have to pay some or all of what you owe back, and it's dependent on your income. Let me give you an example. In the state of Ohio, $65,000 is the limit for one person. If you come to me and you're making $68,000 a year and you're single, you're just a little bit over the limit. And I probably can't file a 7 for you. But if I put you in a Chapter 13, let's pretend you have $100,000 in debt, you might only be paying $300 a month in your Chapter 13 because you don't make much more over the limit, right? So you might be in a Chapter 13 paying $300 a month for the next 5 years, okay? That's $18,000 over the next 5 years. And at the end of 5 years, your bankruptcy's over, everything else you owe is gone. You paid 18 cents on the dollar because your income was just a little bit over the limit. But if you come to me and you're making $100,000 a year and you're living alone, you're probably going to end up paying all $100,000 of that off. You're probably going to be in a payment making like $1,800 a month for the next 5 years because you're a higher earner. And in the end of 5 years, all your debt will be gone, but there's no compounding interest paid. And let me give you an example. $40,000 in debt, 26% compounding interest over 5 years is $70,000 total, 40 for the debt and 30 for the interest. So for example, if you consolidated $40,000 in debt onto one 26% credit card, over the 5 years, you'd pay $70,000. Whereas in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, you'd pay about $46,000. So these are real numbers. And borrowing more money usually is not the right choice because of the compounding interest problem. That's why bankruptcy exists, is to eliminate compounding interest, negative equity, stop the world from spinning, and to reorient the world based on what that person can afford. So everybody's Chapter 13 looks very different, but there's this threshold above or below these numbers, and your choices are limited.
Great explanation. I love that you gave the numbers because when you think about those numbers, wow, that's a really big difference.
And I want to point out too, I'm sorry, that
Yeah,
these
go ahead.
numbers are different in every state. So those
Okay.
are Ohio's numbers. Depending on where you live, your numbers might start higher, they might start lower. So that's really important to know that those numbers are different from state to state.
Yeah. So it could just depend. But I mean, the chapter 7 and the chapter 13 idea is still the same from state to state. It's just the numbers might be different as to what
Exactly.
qualifies you for each one. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
So tell us a little bit about how the bankruptcy process works. How do you get started?
Yeah, you get started by talking to a bankruptcy lawyer. I mean, that's fundamentally how it begins. Most people, they start to research, they come across some of my content or, a friend filed, and they figure out that they are going to need to make their way to a bankruptcy lawyer. Most bankruptcy lawyers offer free consultations. It's just kind of standard in our business. And talking to a bankruptcy lawyer is really how you start to get a better understanding about what's going to be possible for you based on the number of people in your household, based on how much income you guys have, right? And based on how much debt you've got. And there's nuances from state to state that require you to be, consulting with somebody near you. But you usually meet with a bankruptcy lawyer. I meet with probably 5 people a day in my practice. I've got a few after this interview. And we go through, and I usually explain or go through their finances and kind of explain what I see, how I think a bankruptcy would help, or maybe if it wouldn't help, we talk about that. And basically, people really go from there and make some decisions. The biggest problem with filing for bankruptcy for most people is number one, pushing through the shame and embarrassment. Right. That's kind of why we're here. Right. And number two is coming up with the money to file, which is the irony here. It costs money to file a bankruptcy. The going rate for Chapter 7 nationwide is about $2,500 right now. But as you can see, my client who had $82,000 in debt this morning, 2,500, I don't know how you get out of debt for anything less than that, right? So coming up with the money is complicated, and that can be cumbersome for a lot of people who are in this situation. But it's usually about pushing through the shame and embarrassment and coming up with the money. Because once people do that, it's a very empowering process. I was talking to my followers yesterday. I was live and I showed them a picture of what I looked like 5 years ago, and I was 100 pounds heavier. And we talk about how embarrassing it is to know you have a problem, but not talk about it with anybody. We know how it is to not open your envelopes, just like it is to not step on the scale, right? But there is something very powerful when you finally come to that point in your own mind and you say, screw it. I'm getting on that scale. I'm going to see what that says. And today I'm going to start making the changes. When you get to that point and you look at the number, you take a deep breath and you stop looking at it as, the thing that's dragging you under. And you start looking at it as the problem that has a solution that you have the key to solve. It's incredibly empowering. And most people realize that, after talking to me, it's not about moral mistakes, right? You're not judging you. This is about an industry that's taking advantage of people and an economy that really encourages it. And we have to find ways to stay sane and to live in this environment. And there is a tremendous amount of power and comfort that comes with acknowledging that you have a problem, acknowledging the scope of it, and then truly setting out to solve it. That's how I think a lot of people feel. They feel empowered.
I think it is like taking that first step. And I always talk about the mindsets and obstacles that come along with this, usually towards the end. But let's just say it right here. Picking up that phone and making that call has got to be really hard to do. Like you're admitting that you have that problem.
That's true. But I also want everybody to understand that you should have that same exact feeling if you're walking into a bank to get a consolidation loan, or if you're calling your human resources department to ask about a 401k loan. You should feel just as terrified because taking out a 401k loan is not a good thing to do. 401, everybody's retirement plan is 100% protected in bankruptcy. 100% the entire thing. I can have $1 million 401k and I can still file bankruptcy and get rid of $82,000 in debt. And the reason is because our government does understand that we have to take care of ourselves. Bankruptcy exists to get rid of this dangerous debt so that you can preserve your future. And so that's, those are people should be just as afraid about walking into a payday lender as they are about picking up the phone, because picking up the phone to talk to a lawyer is free and it gives you nothing but information and insight about your problem and possible solutions. And so I want to desensitize people to feeling like picking up the phone and talking to a lawyer is scary. It's free. And as somebody who's on the other side of the phone all day long for 25 years, right? I'm anxious. Sometimes I don't, sometimes it's a lot for me too. Sometimes, this is my third one. I've gone through a lot and emotions are overwhelming. I get it. But this is your opportunity to advocate for yourself. And I really want people to feel the freedom to demand information so they can solve their problems. It's free. I want people to get free information. And that's really why I do what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point, though. Never take a loan. I would still tell people never take a loan on your 401k. There's just so many things that can go wrong. And I am not even sure that I've listed bankruptcy protection as one of those things when I've gone into the list of things that can go wrong. So I'm adding that to my list right now.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
yeah.
frustrating, Linda, because as somebody who understands about money, for example, people don't understand that a home equity line of credit is a second mortgage, right? So the industry changed what they call it, because if you called it a second mortgage, people would pause before they did it. And so it's an example of a way that the industry scams you into it. And here's the thing, we've been told that a home equity line of credit is the best way to pay off that debt and to do this and to do that. But if you live in the state of Ohio, your house, we're going to protect your house, the equity in your house, $185,000 per person. So my husband and I could have a house worth almost $400,000 with no mortgage on it, no mortgage. And it would be safe in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy in Ohio. So if you go and you take your $40,000 in debt that I can flush down the toilet in a Chapter 7, if you take that $40,000 and you convert it to a home equity line of credit and you stick it on your house, you've now saddled yourself with a second mortgage, something unsecured debt we could have flushed away, and you've changed it and now made it more important. And now you've hamstringed yourself, because if you lose your job, you don't just have to find a way to pay your first mortgage. You now have to find a way to pay the second one too. And you are more at risk of losing your house. That's why you don't borrow money before you talk to a bankruptcy lawyer. If you had taken it out of your 401k, it's gone. I mean, you're robbing from your future. You lose your job, it's just simply gone. You have to spend the next 5 years recommitting to it. Now you've lost 5 years of the compounding interest that's supposed to enjoy in our retirement plans. So bankruptcy truly does exist to protect our retirement plans and to protect our home for the most part. And so anybody who's borrowing from those sources before talking to a bankruptcy lawyer for that general unsecured debt is really making a mistake. They're making a big financial mistake. And that's why bankruptcy is not the last option. It never should be.
Wow. Yeah, great perspective there. I love that you brought the home equity loan idea into it, because I just think it's, to me, like it's a second mortgage. Like I know that, but I mean, I used to be in real estate, and that's always been there in my head. But the average person probably doesn't know that a home equity line of credit is a mortgage, and that they're changing that debt to a place where it would not be included in a bankruptcy. So interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So bankruptcy it's not the end, it's a reset, right? And I think that's what
Exactly.
you're trying to say is like people think that when they make that phone call, they're like, this is the end. Like I'm filing bankruptcy and I'm at rock bottom, but it's a reset. So we need to reframe it. Tell us more about how you help people reframe that when you talk to them.
Yeah, I'll give you a great story that I often tell people in my lives or when I'm talking to them on the phone. You have to imagine that on your 18th birthday, you wake up and you have a new financial car in the driveway. Okay, so it's your brand new it's your financial life. You have all these dreams. You want to get in that car and take it to California, and you want to start this business, and you want to do that, and you want to go to college, and you want to get married, and you want to buy a house. Your future, right? That's you got to get in your financial car and drive there. So you get in your car, you got to navigate around the neighborhood, right? You got to figure out how to drive. We're all messy in those early years, right? And you're local, you're doing stop signs, you're around, but then we all have to get to that point where we have to start making our way to the highway, right? Get on the highway, we're on the ramp, we're in that right lane. Let's imagine you're in Cleveland traffic in Cleveland, Ohio, going around the Beltway, 5 lanes in each direction. And you're in that first lane and you're just learning and you're feeling good. And, you get a little bit further and you're like, oof, I feel comfortable moving into this second lane. I'm picking up a little bit of this financial stuff. Ooh, I made a little mistake. Oop, I'm back up here. You move over the third lane, right? And you're like passing other people, but people are still passing you on the left. Now, what do you do when you're on a 4-lane highway? You're 3 lanes in, you're speeding along, trucking along. You're not the fastest one, right? Well, you're not going crazy, but you're like passing everybody else, all the slow pokes. And all of the lights in your car go off and smoke starts coming out of the hood. What do you do? Most people in the financial car, if this is money, if this is debt we're talking about, they press on the gas. They think that pressing on the gas will get them to where they're going. But you and I understand how cars work, right? Pressing on the gas ain't going to help this. And bankruptcy is understanding that you need to tap the brake and you need to put your right blinker on and you need to get off at the next exit. And you need to stop and call AAA and you need to let all those other cars go do what they're doing right now. And you need to fix your car. And when the car is fixed, you get right back on the highway, the same place you got off. You're not back in your driveway. You're back in the same exact place, only now your car works. And now you're able, you don't have to stop at California. You can go to wherever you want to go. And that is a better understanding of what bankruptcy is. Your problem is debt. Your problem is a broken car. Making the decision to get off the highway and get help doesn't mean that you failed. It means it's the only way we're going to get you back on the highway. You will not be able to stay on this highway by pressing the gas. And I know that. I know that the end is coming, even if you don't realize that it is. We got to get you off and take care of this car, and we can get you back on safely. That's how I explain really what bankruptcy is. It's not the end, it's the solution to a problem you've already got.
Yeah. Great analogy. Okay, so you're back in the car, you've reset, you're back in the car, you're in the
Yeah.
third lane, you're right where you were.
Yeah.
But how do you change your behaviors and make sure that you don't end up with a broken car again?
Oh, I love this question because I would like to take a step back and I would love to educate you and your audience as to the top 6 reasons why people fall into debt in America. Okay? Because I don't think most people understand this. The first reason, and by far the number one reason why people file for bankruptcy, is due to medical debt. We don't have safe, affordable access to healthcare in America, and consequently, medical debt is number one. The second reason is the death of an earner in the home. Think spouse, think elderly, think Social Security, right? That's number 2. Number 3 is loss of a job, COVID, tariffs, farmers. Number 4 is divorce. There are a lot of people who feel like they're not the reason why the marriage ended. You were doing the right thing. Your spouse ran off with the dispatcher, right? You're still left holding the bag. Number 5 is a failed business. Businesses really, we gotta start businesses in order to be a capitalistic society. And number 6 are scams and financial abuse. So understanding that number 7 is overspending almost always occurs in association with one of these, right? When I have people with $82,000 in credit card debt, we open the credit card, we open the statements. These people are not going to Walt Disney World. They're not taking trips to Tahiti. They're putting groceries and stuff on these things. They're putting medical bills on these. And we are putting the things that we need that we don't have the money for that month on credit cards. And usually it happens secondarily to someone with these other problems or combination of them. So to assume that anybody is filing bankruptcy or even in debt because they're ignorant, dumb, uneducated, they could have avoided it. I think that is a dangerous way to approach this because I don't think that's necessarily true. And I think it helps people to understand if you say to yourself, well, yeah, I've got a lot of debt. I have had medical problems. I lost that job too, and yeah, you start to realize why this exists and how to start letting go of the shame and embarrassment and embracing the solution that's going to get you back on the highway.
Yeah. Yeah, great points. And I love that list because we tend to think of like, of somebody just having a bunch of credit card debt but not really understanding how they got there and the things that happened in their lives that made them get there and that they're not a bad person. They just have had this unfortunate set of circumstances usually that has led them there.
And we live in a society where the lending industry wants you to be desperate and hungry. The more desperate you are, the more credit availability they give you. And it is a system that is designed to trap people in compounding interest. And that is
Yeah.
that is the bottom line.
Yeah. All right. So if someone has done a bankruptcy and they're back on the road, what is one of the first things that they should focus on?
Rebuilding your credit. That's it. Your goal is to rebuild your credit. Your goal is to learn everything you can about your credit score, about how to get it higher, understanding billing cycles, understanding that you actually have to have revolving lines of credit if you want to have a good credit score in America. Unfortunately, you can't just not get credit cards and everyone says, "Oh, why should they ever have credit card again? They ruined it." And the answer is, I've been in several car accidents. I've had a lot of fender benders, right? And that I still drive. They're still allowing me to drive, right? Nobody took away my license because I hit a Domino's pizza driver when I was 17, right? We all make mistakes. And so the reality is that bankruptcy acknowledges mistakes and then we get back in. And assuming you want to re-enter the workforce, and that's the whole, or re-enter the wealth market, right? Whole purpose, let's remind everybody, the purpose of bankruptcy is to get rid of general unsecured non-priority debt so that you can turn around and build wealth. That's the point. You're supposed to turn around and build wealth. So if that's what you want to do, it's rebuilding your credit. It's understanding how credit works. It's taking out lines of credit and being really careful with them. It's making sure you have health insurance if you can possibly get it so that you do not end up with medical bills. It's budgeting. It's learning how these 6 things could come back around to you again, any one of them, and learning how to better prepare for the future. That's a complicated answer, right? But understanding credit and being more cautious about the ways that people get into debt and providing more of a boundary there is what really is necessary. But rebuilding the credit is pretty easy to do after bankruptcy.
Interesting.
hmm
So it's not too hard to get a credit card after bankruptcy?
Yeah. So, what's going to surprise a lot of your followers is that my clients who are filing a Chapter 7 can oftentimes literally buy a car the day after we file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. They absolutely have credit cards and stuff way too soon. We need them to wait a little bit longer. We need them to wait a couple of months in order for their credit score to get up really high, but they have access to credit immediately. And I'll tell you why here in a minute. My clients will get back to a 720 credit score within 12 to 24 months. Many of them do it sooner, but 12 to 24 months is pretty standard. And my clients are able to buy a house 2 to 4 years after they file. And so a lot of people can't do those things with $82,000 of debt. right? Getting rid of the debt is the only way we're going to get you to a place where you can buy a house in 2 to 4 years. So, increasing the credit score and understanding what it is you want to do in life, that's really what's important. Where do you want to go? You know how to drive the car a lot better now. You've learned a lot. People learn a lot going through bankruptcy. They do.
Wow. Okay. All right. So, action steps. If someone listening is overwhelmed by debt and they're wondering if they should call someone, what should they call? What should they do? How do they get clarity?
So, I was in the New York Times last year, and the question was, who's a good candidate for filing for bankruptcy? And the answer is, if you have more than $10,000 in that general unsecured non-priority debt, that's going to be credit cards, medical bills, payday loans, personal loans, that kind of stuff. If you have more than $10,000 in that type of debt and it's unmanageable to you, and you are unable to safely budget your way out in 3 years or less without borrowing more money, right? If you're unable to do that, you should be talking to a bankruptcy lawyer. I actually did put together a bankruptcy lawyer referral network service for my followers on my social media accounts because this is really what I think people should do. I think people should get as much information from people like me and other lawyers out there talking about this. And then I think they need to turn inward and literally talk to a bankruptcy lawyer near them. Like I say, I this is what I do all day long. I do consultations with people 5 a day sometimes. And so I'm not judging people. I'm just really trying to get to the best information for them quickly. And I want your audience to hear this because I don't want them to feel so scared when they pick up the phone. This is just an empowering opportunity for them. And that's what I suggest. I suggest that you talk to a local bankruptcy lawyer near you to get some clarity about what might be possible. I don't think it doesn't cost you anything. It's usually done by telephone. I do all mine by telephone, and all you get is information. And I that's what I advocate for is education and information.
Great. I love that. Okay. So I'm going to ask next, who needs to find you? You answered part of that, but I'm going to have you just answer again in your words. Who should reach out to you?
Yeah, if you're listening to this podcast and your heart is racing, your armpits are trickling a little bit, you're feeling a little bit emotional because this is hitting you. If you've been robbing Peter to pay Paul, if you have been moving the shell games around, you take from this, you borrow from here, you move everything over to here, you're not solving your problem. And I want you to solve the problem so you can move past it. You are the type of person who would probably learn a little bit of information about your own situation and learn some paths that are available to you if you talk to a lawyer. I talk to people on Social Security. I talk to people who are wealthy. Wealthy people do really well in a Chapter 13 because we eliminate all the compounding interest. So I had a client not too long ago who had $120,000 in debt, and she was paying like $5,000 a month in minimum payments. And we were able to get her into a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, paying closer to $2,000 a month, like $2,200 a month. It's a tremendous savings for her. Tremendous savings. She has every reason to be proud of her very good, successful career, but it came at a cost. She had medical issues. She had other things happened, and um, her life is a lot different. So anybody who's struggling with your bills, and if they're general unsecured, right? We can't do as much with taxes and student loans. And so we're really looking at this type of specific type of debt. If that's your problem and it's more than 10 grand and you don't think you can get it taken care of in the next 3 years on your own without going further into debt, you are somebody who should be reaching out to a lawyer. And I do have a lawyer referral network service that your audience can access if they head over to my website.
Great. So your website is theladylikelawyer.com, and I will put that in the show notes. And is that the best place for them to find you, or where else can they find you?
I mean, that my website is always a good place to find me. My TikTok account is the most prolific, and not everybody's a TikToker, but I have about 4,000 videos over there about bankruptcy. So that's really where my library and catalog are at. I oftentimes take some of that content over to Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, so you can find me at all the places the popular videos go up on those other sites. And there's just a lot of information out there. And there's a lot of ways for people to find out information without being ashamed or embarrassed. And I just want to say that as somebody who meets with 10 to 20 people a week in a small rural Ohio town, I meet with people that their kids went to school with my kids. We go to church, the grocery store. I am very well embedded in this community that I'm in, and I know the level of problems people are having financially in all different socioeconomic groups. And this runs across, it doesn't matter how much money you have. If debt is overwhelming at a certain level for everyone, and everybody has options here as a general rule.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being my guest today, Adrienne. This is such fantastic information. I've even learned a lot today. So, really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. I know that the things I talk about are confusing, controversial for a lot of people, but we are in you and I are in a group of forward-thinking financial people. We're all kind of hanging out together and getting a lot of trading information and ideas. And it is important that people start getting a lot more comfortable with the concept of bankruptcy, because it truly is going to save a lot of people. And my last comment here is, the problem is debt, and you've already got it. Bankruptcy doesn't make it worse. It only makes it better. Bankruptcy is one solution to a problem you've already got. And I think that helps people really start to understand that they need to save themselves.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right. If you're still listening, thank you for staying to the end. And you're one of the real ones, and that matters. And your episode closing nugget from me is: bankruptcy isn't a moral failure, it's a financial tool. When you release the shame, you give yourself permission to rebuild.
Thanks so much for listening to Real Money, Real Life. Want to see what's blocking you from financial confidence or discover your money personality? Head to the resources page at lindagriz.com for our free quizzes. That's LINDAGRIZ.com/resources. If you're loving what you're learning, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. I'm your Me Money Guide to Financial Clarity, Linda Grizely, and I'll catch you next time as we talk more real money, real life, because you deserve to feel confident with your money and good about how you spend it. The content shared here is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not financial, tax, legal, or planning advice and does not constitute therapy or mental health counseling. Please consult an actively licensed and qualified professional for advice or help specific to your situation.